And
Okay, we just hit record in the middle of this, so I'm going to say we hit record. So, all right, so you had fun last week.
Yeah, so since I didn't go to Nashville, I worked on that little. I worked not in the business, but I did a little hobbyist project that I've been telling you about, and I made some progress on it. And using that site, Can I Run AI? I went through and I actually had AI write me a program that would take all the models that were on the page for my particular machine and load them up and do a stress test of my machine for each one and give me a rating for code, for writing, for analytics. And then it came back and gave me a rating for each one. So in my program now, kind of like the Copilot GPT or GitHub Copilot that is in code, you can select your AI engine and flip it real time on your machine if you have the engine running. It's like I'm using Olem. So Olem's running, but no AI agents are running until I select it. And then it swaps out the engine, and then I'm using that engine for my whatever I'm working on. It was kind of cool. I lost probably about 4 hours, but it was one of those fun rabbit hole projects that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I finally got in there and played with it. I have something I can show you, but it's not quite there yet. I may save a show and tell for another episode, but it's pretty close. Like I can now take the transcripts, throw them into this. It gives me a episode summary. It gives me the SEO. It gives me suggested titles, all that stuff. It gives me a sample WordPress template that I can drop in, modify, or change, all at a push of a button. So it's pretty slick. The models aren't as great still as like Claude or ChatGPT or, you get what you pay for. And since these are free, I'm going to have to train them, the crap out of them to get where I want. But because you already did the other project, I want to take all those transcripts and feed it into it and then see what I get out of it.
And that's what I did with it is I used it. I've gone back and forth on it because I've got the whole back office of our company now is starting to be like, I've got pipelines and stuff like that for AI and doing a lot of those same kinds of things. And I keep going back and forth on where I can use just the local Olama stuff and usually, just use those and they give me exactly what I need. And usually for like meeting summaries and that works great. If I want to do something really complicated, or if it's got a huge amount of context, then I can use OpenAI API and I can use calls out to there. And I play around with that a little bit, depending on what engine I want to, or version I want to work with. Or then sometimes I'll just kick it out. I'll just copy and paste stuff, but go into a chat with something because I get better responses that way. But
are you paying for the API model through GPT, or are you using like a third party that gives you multiple APIs?
No, this is I have that directly because I was building stuff for a customer, and so I ended up I pay for everything. I've got a Perplexity one with API. I've got Grok with API. I've got Chat with API. I've got GitHub Copilot. I've got Microsoft's Copilot. I can't remember. I've got like a bunch, and then we've been bouncing around. We've got one app that we're switching providers and engines on that to try to see how we can best get information for them. Typically, I'm just like, I set up, all of my stuff is set up. So I've got an environment file, and I can just very easily either use my local Olama, and I use one, there's just two engines I use. One is the coder one, and the other one is more the English, summary type one. So between those two, I just pick one. I've got them both up, they're both loaded. So just pick whichever one to hit. And if I want to go a little faster or a little more high end or whatever, then I can always flip it. I can go out. And if I run out of tokens, if I've like burned all my, my API calls, then I'm just like, okay, I'll just push it back to local because that's really where I'm at, is trying to figure out how to. I used AI to build a lot of this stuff out, but now it's like, okay, where do I really not need AI? Or if I need it at all, just put it on a local machine. And that's where I'm getting with like summaries and stuff like that. the summaries, it's cool to do it. It's cool to use AI, but then after that, I don't need it because I want to summarize it and then turn it into something that's like a nice, tight format. And then I just write an app that can search and do that kind of stuff. So that's where I'm going through, is like figuring out what the next steps of my global dominance plan are, basically. So that seems like a perfect introduction for us to start this episode. Apologies for the just like blathering on a little bit, but hey, it's Friday, it's a bonus. So we're going to have a little bit of a good time. We're going to catch up on some stuff. This episode, though, we're going to talk about Thanos. Love that we got through the whole episode without actually making any Marvel references, including the gauntlet Infinity Gauntlet was right behind his head there. It was a great conversation. He's another one. We've had a couple of these people that I've had conversations and am looking to having continued conversations. There are a lot of points that Thanos brought up. And so we will talk about those in today's bonus episode. But first, this is, if you haven't figured it out, Building Better Developers, Developreneur Podcast. Look at me figuring out which side I'm on now. I am one of the founders of that, and also founder of RB Consulting, where we help you when you're going to jump in a technology decision, make sure it's the right decision. Let's make sure that as you're moving forward and you're diving in and you're racing ahead with AI, that you're doing so with your eyes open and making sure that you're headed in the right direction so you don't race yourself right off of a cliff or something like that. Good thing and bad thing. Good thing is, I was going to throw this is our little tech thing here. I'm going to throw it right back to that. Good thing is that once you start leveraging AI and you understand how to use it and you start picking at its edges and you find problems that it can solve, it will help you solve stuff. It will help you be better. It will help you be more productive. It will help you get more stuff done. Be productive is the downside, because sometimes it is not productive. Sometimes you're going to sit there and you're going to spend a day working on something that you really didn't need to. You didn't need to spend that amount of time. I've had more than a couple times that I have lost a good deal of time dealing with AI and building something I really didn't need to build, or adding some rinky-dink little bell and whistle that I didn't, which is the same problem we have everywhere. It's just AI makes it feel a little more painful, I guess. But here to help you assuage all your pains, Michael's going to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Malash. I'm one of the co-founders of Developreneur, Building Better Developers. I'm also the founder of Envision QA, where we create reliable, tailored software that helps you work smarter, scale faster, and stay in control of your business. Good thing, bad thing. So if you watch the first part of this, you know the good thing is I've been playing around. I finally had some time to get around, play around with apps. The bad thing, like Rob alluded to, I lost a couple hours doing something, but I'd rather do that than to just watch TV aimlessly or just do something that it was fun. Even though you can lose time in these things, if you're enjoying it and having fun, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But it is if you have something else you have to get done.
It is also educational. This is something I had a conversation with somebody just yesterday that was saying, that's the neat thing is of the tools that we've had, AI is probably the first one that can teach you how to use it better. So take advantage of that. And then literally ask it, how can I use you better? How can I make better use? What am I not asking you? What should I ask you? What am I missing? Things like that. And it will probably too politely give you an answer. And it is a great way to figure out how to advance your causes. This episode, we talked this week with Thanos Diacakis. And I'm hoping I got your name right. We're going to hope that way we can assume that I got it right. Really bright guy, really great conversation. And it's really good pairing because last week, as in last Friday, the challenge, we talked with Dr. Maisiri, and we were talking about Africa and a lot of their problems about how you have these global systemic problems that are external, because they were talking about energy and data centers and externally trained LLMs and things of that nature. Thanos is on the flip side of that, is now we're talking about why things organizationally fail internally. So this is why you have a ticking time bomb in your company, not to over dramatize it, but basically that you have a project and it's a great project, but it's why it fails. Why And even more, I think we get into the whole idea of like, why do these things fail quietly or silently? It's not a big bang. It just sort of like drifts. And then the next thing you know, you are not where you want to be. You took your hands off the wheel for a while and you're somewhere that you don't need to be. And now you got to figure out how to get back and get back on track. And that's what Thanos talks about. And that's what we really, I think that's some of the most important points there is that it's not about AI is bad. It's not about technology is bad. It's also not about AI is good or technology is good. It is about when we go from demo, when we go from creating the MVP, or actually probably more the POC, proof of concept or a demo mode or something like that, and we go to reality and the rubber hits the road, friction is there. And sometimes friction is going to cause us some issues. Sometimes that friction didn't show up. A lot of times it didn't show up in the demo, didn't show up in the proof of concept or even the MVP because we had too many happy paths. And as we've learned way back, the psychopaths are the ones that you've got to watch out for. But if if it's all happy path, then the real testing is not going to be there. That's why there are crash test dummies. They take cars and they crash them into a wall. They don't just drive them around the street and go like, hey, look, this car can ride around. They do stuff like that where they crash it, they drive it over to a cliff, they hit it with a train, whatever they want to do. That's what we should be doing as well. So we need to make sure that we are preparing our systems for the exceptions, because all of us know the exceptions are where the value is anyways. That's where us handling the exceptions is where our software is better than the person that just like sat down and did no code or AI or something like that, or they vibe coded their way into something. They're probably not thinking about the exceptions. That's what we're here for. That's what Thanos was talking about. And I love that, where he's like saying, hey, there's this thing we want to do, and we've got this great initiative and all this stuff we want to do, and this is how we're going to build it and where we go. And then it hits the engineering reality of like, okay, well, that would be great, but this and that and this other thing. And then what? And so, okay, so you do all that, but what about this? What about that? What if this happens? And it really is the idea of getting somebody to step back and really talk through their process instead of just like blue sky it, which is great. Love doing the blue sky stuff, but at some point you got to anchor yourself back in reality. So I'll start from that and toss it over to you, Michael, and see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so the conversation we had with Thanos was interesting because you and I both worked in different industries and different sectors, and we've seen the impact of AI. We've also seen the so-called phase out of jobs of AI, or the AI firing, which I still think is the no hire, no fire from COVID. But what I've seen companies do, and what Thanos brought up, is companies are jumping in right now. It's like, oh, AI is a buzzword. Let's jump in, let's grab it. We need to use it. But why? They're not thinking through the problem. They just feel that they need to be able to say the buzzwords, be able to just say, hey, we're using it somehow. But the problem is they don't know what they're doing with it. Or they think they can use it for what they want, and they get in there and they just really don't understand the technology enough. Or what it does, and we've said this before, garbage in, garbage out, or it exposes the problems. Where the problem is not the technology, it's the people, it's the decision makers. They don't have the policies and procedures, they don't have the processes defined to utilize AI. They barely have the processes defined to run the organization. So what we've seen is AI is shifting from the coders to the decision makers. The decision makers now need to start thinking through better, making better decisions on what it is that they want to do with the company and how to better utilize AI, instead of just saying, oh, here, we have AI. Let's go throw it at our data sets and see what it comes out with. Well, you can't do that, because if your data is garbage, you're going to get garbage. You have to think through what you're going to use these things for. So I'll stop there because I got a couple other things, but I want your thoughts on some of that as well.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing, and we had this with another conversation we've had where it was like I've used this a lot now. It's the idea of you fix something, but then the boxes start piling up somewhere else further down the line. And that's really what Thanos talked about, is the idea of developers are not coders. Coders are going to go away most likely. I mean, there may be a little, but most are. You're going to see coders to some extent go away, and developers are going to be reviewers. They're going to be orchestrators. They're going to be architects and things like that, and designers. Is that the days of writing code for dollars are in their last days. I think is that it's just, yes, you can write code, but you're going to be writing it with AI. AI is going to write it for you. That doesn't, yeah, you can write a line here and a line there, and you still need to know it, and you still need to understand it. Don't think that I'm saying that those skills have no use, but it's the actual, it's the core behind it. It's the ability to write pseudocode. Really, is probably more important now than ever. I just had that conversation with my team when I'm kicking them off and saying, okay, we are embracing AI, and we're going to do AI assisted development. And I want to make sure that you guys are on the cutting edge and all that kind of good stuff. And I said, look, this is where, if you want to, like, the best way to figure out how to dive into using AI for something besides just like write me a little script, but actually something bigger, is like write pseudocode, put together some pseudocode, throw it into Markdown, throw it into AI, and say, okay, write me an implementation plan, or write me code based on that, or however you do it. Those are the things, those are the skills that you're going to have to get better at. You're going to have to practice. Good news is AI will allow you to fail quickly. So you can go in there and you can do it, and you can do it, and you can do it, and do it, and you can recycle, and you can learn how to better design, think through, get it complete the first time instead of the 100th time. And that's really where the boxes are starting to move. Is it's not about coding. It's about judgment. It's about code review. It's about, like, is it good code? It's about managing it. And does this make sense? Does this scale? Does this, the old, does it blend? But this is, does it scale? And I think this is the interesting thing, is this is where those that are like, I think those that are in AI that have already started, like, working with it. The good news is I'm seeing it a lot. I'm seeing it from the people that are starting to get in and use it very quickly. They're saying, wait a minute, there's some things we're missing here. This is not going to help us until we get some of these other pieces fixed. Now, you brought up a great point about, like, the processes. Yes, you've got to have the process. If you can't automate it if you don't know what the steps are. And that's what a process is. It's just a series of steps. You got to know what the steps are. But then it gets a little more tricky, because, like, we don't really know usually what the steps are, because people lie and people tweak and people forget, including ourselves. So there may be 20 steps that you have, but you forgot that on steps 3, 13, and 17, Mary steps in and she does a little bit of, like, human touch, and then that makes it go forward, which is great until this thing is now running. If Mary has to step in 3 times a day, no big deal. If this thing 10x's and she has to step in 30 times a day, maybe it's too much. If it 100x's and now she's spending 300 times a day, she steps in. At some point, she rubber stamps, or it just blows up, or whatever it is. And this is through most organizations. We have these, and even yourself, is like, you do things that you're like, this is how I do it, and you don't. You have something that you regularly will, like, tweak, adjust, do something with it. And so it's not a hard and fast rules. It's, you have human judgments that is in there on a regular basis. And I know this very well, because my wife beats me up on it all the time, where I say, I do this, and she's like, no, you don't. And I say, I do this, except, and it's like, and that's exactly it. It's like, yes, I do it. And if I do it 999 times out of 1,000, that's still, it's that except. And with AI, that's the problem, because I may only do it 10 times a day, but if AI can do it 10,000 times faster, that except shows up over and over and over again. I'm going to pass that back to you on that one.
So I love that, because you kind of segued towards the direction which I wanted to go for the second part of this. So you mentioned, the future's blended roles, business developers, we're getting away from coders, we're going to more of that analytical, more of the architects, managing the software. But what you didn't touch on, and this is what I wanted to touch on, is we now have to become testers. We need to test our code. Test-driven development is a reality now. You have to test. There's no getting around it because you're not writing the code. You're letting a machine write the code. So you need to test and make sure that your software works as designed, which is going to get you better at writing requirements, better at prompting AI. Uh, you're laughing, but I mean, it's the truth because really, if you
I'm going to
say
take the wind out of your sails, so just keep going.
yeah, but see, the problem is I've had AI write me tests. And yes, it is pretty good at writing tests, but the problem is I still see it on occasion write me a test and just have the test say pass. Like it does all this stuff, but the very last line of the test, it just says test pass. So it looks like it wrote a test. It looks like the test passed, but it didn't because unless you go read the test, unless you get familiar with testing, you can't necessarily trust it. You need to understand what it is that the software is supposed to do. So you, again, like Rob mentioned, you got to be more of that architect, more of that system analytical role. But you need to be able to test the software. You need to understand what the software is doing and get back in there and put on the testing cap. You can't just be a coder anymore. You have to actually test your code and be better at code reviews. All right, go ahead and take the win out of myself.
I'm going to get both sides of this one. So I'm going to slap you, then I'm going to pick you back up or something, or vice versa. So first off, yes, 100%. We have to be testers now. We always did. We always needed to. You needed the best developers could test software and knew how to like get in there and do that. Not necessarily the stuff they wrote, but they could, test stuff that other people wrote. They have an idea how to do it and they would get better at their own. I think that's critical because AI is going to tell you it's done. It's like, okay, I got it done. And it's not. And there's a lot of times it'll do crap that's like, I could spend seasons talking about all the different ways AI has ticked me off. That it's like, yeah, I did that. It's like, no, you didn't. Like, and it'll lie. It'll be like, well, yeah, basically, like, no, you didn't. I told you not to do that, and you did it anyways. So you have to test your systems. I think AI is helpful to build unit tests, but I think what you're going to do, which you need to do, you need to build tests. As soon as you're going to start changing code, as soon as you're going to start touching with AI, build tests, make sure that what you've got is something that you can do a regression test on. Regression testing with the way we're doing AI is going to be, I think, far more critical than it has ever been, because if you're tightening up all those cycles, it's just like CI/CD where you had to have it integrated, you had to do all that testing in there. We have to do it. We have to do it at a level that we can verify what we're putting into the system before it goes out. I will say on the downside of this, I think test-driven development for that very reason is not going to help at all. I think is a huge problem waiting to happen because of exactly what you said, is if you do test-driven development and you say, this is what you need to do, AI is going to find a way to solve those problems, to give you those answers, but it's not going to do it within the right architecture. It's not going to do something necessarily that's going to scale. Now, you may luck out, but I think what it is that I think that the test-driven side of it is going to go away to some extent. I think that the design and the architecture are as critical as they've ever been, because I think that's going to be your key, and that's going to be the best AI developers are going to be able to put together design that they can give to AI or a series of agents, and those agents will go build something that is maintainable, scalable, all of the ulls that are important to be able to have production grade quality software. But the flip side of that is like, okay, we do all the design. Think of your standard waterfall process where you're doing requirements gathering, which is humans, even though AI can help you with that. Design, which is humans, even though AI can help you with that. And you get into implementation, that could be pure AI at this point. It's like, I literally have got projects I've got running that has been like literally the implementation might as well have been all AI. Yes, I'm touching code, I'm writing code and doing stuff, but it's more on a code review level. And so that's going to disappear. But then that means that, which is really interesting now, because that means that what comes next, I know everybody misses this question, but after implementation comes testing. And so that is what we're going to have, is we're going to take traditionally, and this one, I haven't even spoken on this one, but this is a good one to think about. Traditionally, SDLC waterfall, 80% of the time was spent in implementation. If AI 10x's that or something like that. And so now suddenly all these huge cycles of coding drop down to, effectively nothing. Months and years come down to maybe days and weeks. Then that actually should open up the lifetime of that project. So now we should see a shift as we shrink the implementation side. Probably on the one side, we're going to have Zoom's thinking my hand, so I'm going to raise my hand. But on the one side, I'll do it here. So on the one side, we've got the design, and now we have more time for design. But on the back end, there should be more for testing, and that's where you're going to have to change. It is a truly a coder to developer mindset change, because now the coding side of it might as well be negligible. The design is critical, and I think it actually should, if we do it right, shift the whole testing balance into testing, which is where you were right. I think everybody not only needs to be a tester, I think they need to be able to think like a tester and think all of the non-happy paths. They need to be able to do stuff not as a unit tester, but as a system integration regression test, and figure out how AI can help you with that. But it's going to come back to, Michael, the one that was key is he's seen it. If you haven't tried it, go out there and get AI to help test. It will do stuff that it will just say yes. It will throw stuff in there and just do it to make it work. And it'll tell you, oh, I mentioned somewhere in there that I was going to let you fill out those tests. I just put them in there so you have 100 tests and you can go fill them out yourself. It's like, no, but you've got to be able to recognize that. And like I said, unit tests aren't enough. You're going to have to look at the system level as well, because that's where now we can take context that AI cannot. So I'm going to pass that back to you so you can smack me back.
Yeah. So, no, because in a way you're right. Test-driven development, because AI is going to be doing most of the coding, that essentially goes away. But what you need to make sure you're doing is, as it's building these code pieces, as it's building them out, make sure it is building unit tests to cover the new code and review those tests. The other thing you mentioned, and I loved it, was the integration test, because I just had a project I looked at the other day where it was like, I was asked to write a Kafka API to create some topics, push the messages up to the topics, pull them down, and write it to a database. I'm like, cool, no problem. Not even 4 hours later, I was told another team had already done this, and I needed to go check out their project and look at it and review it and see if we can piggyback on it. Checked out their code. It had a very loose README file on how it's used locally, had no information whatsoever on how it was deployed, how it's used. I spent 30 minutes. I ran the whole project through AI. I said, write me a kitchen sink level documentation explaining this whole project to me. It did. It highlighted that there was almost no testing, because they felt they couldn't test it locally, but they had built the infrastructure with Docker to deploy all the components so that they could actually use Postman to test the application. Well, I took it one step further with AI, and I had it, build me integration tests so that you can actually, through integration tests, it would spin up the Docker containers it needed for testing to test the integration points. It would run the Postman at certain points. It would test all that. And it did that within an hour. I validated everything, and I had a fully functional integration test as well as unit test to make sure all the endpoints worked. So now when they ran the build, it would run the build, it would run the test, and it would run the integration test. It took me 2 hours of work. Now, without AI, that would probably take a week or two, and a lot of companies would throw that out and say, no, we're not going to do that. But now with the speed of AI, you need to be doing things like that. You can't overlook that, and you need to make sure you start building those guardrails.
Now this goes back to our, the drum I keep beating, is that in order to have good tests, in order to have, you have to verify what's being done, is you have to know what problem you're solving and what does a good solution look like. So it does come down to, like, all of these things we've talked about are critical. You have to be able to, apps are going to come faster, but on the backside of that is, okay, well, what do we do with them? There are things that need to be built in, and AI is getting better at building in things like good documentation, or at least we can build context around it so that it will give you good context. It'll give you good documentation. Hopefully, your design prompts and stuff that you're using to get AI to build it are also documentation that you can use, and you can also have it flip that around and do more human readable documentation. You should be building tests every bit of the way. That should just be part of it, just like regular commits and code reviews and things like that. There should always be unit tests, and you should be checking that. All of that is awesome, but you have to come back to what problem are we solving, and then what does a good solution look like? Because that's where you're going to have to figure out, how do we use AI to get better, and then from there, what happens when we haven't figured out what that solution will do, which is also a problem that it often comes up, that is a human issue, is where we build a tool and we think it can do A, B, C, and then we find out in the real world it's being used to do D, E, and F. And now we've got to figure out, what does that look like? What does the testing look like for that? What is the product path, maybe the upgrade path for that if we're going to use it? What are the integrations? Michael brought that up. Like, what does this have to work with? Almost nothing lives in a vacuum. So what does it have to be able to play nicely with? We have a lot. There's a lot to think through here, and hopefully, this hasn't scared you, but helped you realize that this is it's not about the AI tool. It's not about the AI cool stuff it can do. It's about us resetting our minds and our mental focus so that we can leverage this, and we aren't just building something. Like, we're not just building a pile of apps. We are actually solving problems in a way that they are scalable, that they are maintainable, that we will be able to solve it and then move on to the next problem, instead of solve it and then spend the next 6 weeks trying to figure out how our solution actually works in the real world. Challenge this time around. I think this one is this will be a little more advanced, I'm going to say, because this is pushing it a little bit on that, depending on where you're at in your AI world. Whatever app you're working on, or code snippets you're working on, whatever it is, depending on where you're at, the challenge this week is to build, AI assisted or not, a regression test for the app. Not like unit tests, not like one page or something like that, but an actual walk through your application test. If you've got if it's an ATM test, ATM app, essentially, it would be something where it's like, okay, you need to be able to have somebody come in and they log in and they deposit money, and then they can check their balance, and then they can withdraw money. And then what happens if there's no money in the machine, and some things like that. Is like, build a regression test. And if it's something you have no idea how you would do it, ask AI how to do it, because you will probably stumble across some tools that are out there to help you, whatever your app is, whether it's a mobile app or a web app or whatever. There are automation tools, there are robots, there are all kinds of cool stuff out there. You may use agents themselves to go test it. And that may be where most of the agents end up working in the future, is that they are automated testers. But I think it's a good challenge, even if you can't execute, but just thinking through it, like, what would that look like? What steps would I need to take? What would I need to test? What would testing my app look like? Because this is going to be one of these skills that I think are going to be critical as we move forward. Thoughts on that, Michael? It's testing, so I know you're going to love it.
Right. So the other thing too is, a lot of people don't know what integration testing is. Honestly, they know unit testing, they know functional testing, but they don't know integration testing. If you don't understand it, or you're not sure what it is, this is also a great time to use AI to teach you what it is, how to use it, and definitely look at the references that it gives you. Don't always just follow what AI says, but follow the references. Go check out what some of the pages have out there, because sometimes you'll stumble across a gem where it's like, oh, I need to bookmark that, because that's going to be crucial in my AI journey to learn how to use this correctly.
Yeah, I think that's I found that is actually a really good dual level learning thing, is go to Notebook LM, go find, use a free one and use 10 sources. So go find 10 sources that really help that are really good discussions about whatever your topic is, and then have it, either ask it questions. You can do a podcast format that's a long form deep dive. You can do an interview format where it's somebody interviewing something. You can have it interview you. You can interview it. You can do slideshows. You can do a video presentation. There's just a bunch of different ways to slice and dice it. You can do flashcards. There's all kinds of stuff you can do depending on what your topic is that can help you learn. So while there's more to learn than there's ever been, there's probably less excuse than there's ever been to learn about some of these topics and to spend a little bit of time on it and be able to get yourself up to speed so that then you can really, I don't know if necessarily master, but at least have that in your, have those arrows in your quiver, as it were. So challenge this week, testing, is build a system test, build something that will actually, what does your whole system look like, and test it and see if it works. And it will be frustrating if you're like me, because a lot of times when I start building this, it's while it's still being built and there's all kinds of bugs that get found while I'm building out the test. So especially if it's your own little pet project, you may have just found yourself a lot of extra work you're going to have to do fixing it so that you can actually build the test that can test it and verify that you fixed it. That being said, thanks so much for hanging out with us this week. Last week, the almost 10 years, I guess we're 9 years, solidly 9 years into this thing. Just hanging out with us and making yourselves better, because this is, as we talked about before, these are the kinds of things that, yes, they help organizations, but they can also help communities as well, that we need to get out there and become better developers, because there's a lot of problems to be solved, and we are the ones that can be on that front line along with the business owners and founders and people like that, solving those problems and making a better world. If you want to feel good, go out there and write some code that makes a better world. As always, though, go out there and have yourself, at least for today, have yourself a great day, have a great weekend, and we will talk to you next week.